The Projection Booth podcast is sponsored by Scarecrow Video. Try out Scarecrow's rent-by-mail service. Choose from over 150,000 films and get Blu-rays, 4Ks, and DVDs delivered directly to your door. Visit scarecrow.com today.
Hold your ears, folks. It's showtime.
People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
And a happy Friday to all you survivors out there. I will be broadcasting live as we approach the end of the world. They say we got 3 days left before Mother Nature turns on us for good, ending our stay on planet Earth once and for all.
I found a roll of film.
One last project?
My swan song.
Are you a photographer?
Tried to be.
What happened?
Well, civility is hard to maintain at times like these. I'm just gonna spend the next 3 days coming to terms with what my purpose was.
What's that?
You keep him numb until it's old. Oh, I got anything you need that a doctor prescribes.
I was wondering if you could possibly help me out with something. There might be a way out of this mess. And I have half the money. I just need a little bit of help.
I'm not giving you the money, bro.
Well, what about Katie? Or she's got no place to go.
Don't worry about my big brother. I take care of him, he doesn't take care of me. Nick's gone. They broke in and took him. They said they're gonna come back for the money. Said they expect me to pay now. Who is Nick involved with?
If you give these guys trouble, you'll stop at nothing till I see you dead. Go home. Be with your family.
Ken, what the hell is going on?
Look, they followed you. They are coming right now.
You've been a real thorn in my side these past few days.
I have to find him. If you won't help me, I'll do it myself.
Just because civilization's gonna end doesn't mean that I'm going to.
Find him. We'll find him.
Welcome to the Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me once again is Mr. Ben Buckingham.
G'day, all.
We conclude a month of mostly Patreon requests with one from listener Pat Radke, Exposure 36. This is the 36th entry in the Exposure series. The 2021 film was written and directed by Mackenzie G. Mauro and stars Charles Oudo as Cam, a very appropriate name for a photographer. He's spending the last 3 days left on Earth by selling drugs and wandering the streets of New York, running into a colorful array of characters. We will be spoiling this film as much as we possibly can, so if you don't want anything ruined, please turn off the podcast and come back after you've seen the movie. We will still be here. So, Ben, I imagine this was a first-time watch for you?
It was indeed. I hadn't come across this at all in my letterboxed wanderings. Saw the blurb and stoked my curiosity. I generally am attracted to some of these more like odd sounding, maybe experimental, artistic leaning endeavors with a bit of genre. So I was like, yeah, let's check that out and discuss it.
Yeah, this was a new one for me as well. Since Pat Radke requested it, I said, all right, sounds good. Let's track this one down. Not too difficult to find, out on DVD, out there streaming. Definitely not a ton of stuff written about this film. In fact, I found the reviews of this to be almost like a Rorschach test because it was very interesting for me what the different reviewers were focusing on. Some of them were focusing on the relationship of our main character with the woman that he runs into in here. Some of them were talking about the, for lack of a better term, the blue people that show up. Everybody seemed to focus on different things where I was just like, is this the same movie? But Yes, it is. There are a lot of different little pieces to this. Very much an independent production, and you can really feel that as you watch this.
Probably like halfway through before my brain went, 2021. If not lockdown film, then like just after lockdown. It's certainly more open. I think it probably was like not quite full quarantine period. It looks like it was a little bit after that because they do move around quite a bit. It is not just apartments or one apartment trying to fudge together a lot, but there is a limited crew, limited cast, not a like huge, no huge crowd scenes or anything like that, which can be just being an independent film with limited resources, or it can be that there's a pandemic going on. I think it does fold into that kind of, not exactly a genre. What do we call it? Like the patch of cinema that happened in that era, and obviously reflects quite a bit of what people were feeling and thinking at that time. Not a lot of optimism, but not exactly a pessimistic film either. Walks a middle ground between the two. And yeah, very definitely, like I've worked on a number of micro budget films and small productions and things. And so there was a lot here that I was just like, yep, I can recognize what you were going through.
So we should talk about the conceit of this film. The name of the film is Exposure 36. And for people who may not remember actual film, snapshots with the family holiday.
Could be taken on holiday, could be. Snap, snap, grin, grin, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more.
They used to come in roles of 12, 24, 36. And our main character, Cam, finds an unexposed roll of film in a safe. And he decides during these last 3 days on Earth, because there is some sort of, what is it? It's got to be some sort of like ecological disaster that is about to happen, and everybody is going to die in 3 days. While he is undergoing this the last few days, there's a quote at the beginning where it talks about how the world is going to end and the calendar is going to read Monday. So I'm guessing this is all taking place over a weekend. And during that time, he is using those last 36 exposures of this roll of film. And that's our conceit going through here, is him taking photographs. And then also this whole idea of this being 3 days before the end of the world. Now, I have to say that I don't know how the world's going to end, and I don't know how people are going to be, but it feels like if we're 3 days before the end of the world, it's going to get really crazy, as opposed to this, which is very much like probably the most quiet apocalypse that I've ever seen, other than maybe The Quiet Earth, the classic New Zealand film from Jeff Murphy, director also of Free Jack. That's right. There is a title card at the beginning that says Friday. So we are spending the weekend here. I don't know.
And there is a Saturday. There's a Saturday one. I can't think that there might have been a Monday one. I'm not sure.
I think that was one of the complaints in one of the reviews that I read was there's no title card for this. And also you don't see all 36 exposures. And I'm like, okay, dude, relax.
I was tempted to count the exposures. I just looked, there was part of me after the first viewing that was like, will there actually be 36? The second viewing was like, nah, I reckon there's 36. I don't need to count it. I trust you. But there was definitely a Friday and a Saturday title card, because the Saturday one is when the John Carpenter-esque score suddenly dives in.
Where was Sunday? Where had I left Sunday? And I told him and he didn't believe me.
What?
They don't make Sunday.
Why not?
Because of God.
Yeah, I really like the score. I think the score is probably the strongest element of this entire film. It just really carries stuff along because it's not fast moving by any stretch of the imagination. It's 90 minutes and you feel every minute going by.
Yeah, and it feels like it's very much inspired by certain filmmakers and their scores. Jeff Nichols feels like a big shadow cast over this film. Take Shelter, especially. But the score doesn't feel like it's just riffing or borrowing. It does feel like somebody was like, oh, I loved that. It was great. I think, I can make it work here. And they do. It does work quite strongly for the film and keep it moving along and fills in a lot of spaces that the lower budget can't really do. Even though it is quite a recent film, just the very short amount of years between its release and now have not helped it much. because, as you said, it's a very quiet apocalypse. There's not really like a high level of insanity on display or chaos or disintegration or any of these things. It's very personal, very like reserved and enclosed. And that maybe might have felt like a possibility back in 2021, but even with COVID and everything. But as we have seen just in the last of America, it's not going to look like this. 99% of your population is dead or gone, which the film doesn't explicitly or state or suggest in any way other than the quietness. Yeah, it's going to be like absolutely insane. And so it feels much more anachronistic than maybe it could have otherwise.
Every day is a lot louder than this film will ever be. And I'm curious about when money would lose its value. We are 3 days before the end of the world. Our main character, Cam, is going around taking photos, but he is primarily, as I said in the beginning, is a drug dealer. He's still asking for money. And I'm like, why? What is going on? Why would you ask for money? I can understand peddling drugs and I understand wanting drugs before the end of the world. I've been wanting drugs since 2016 around here. And thank God Michigan is legal now because you need something to take the edge off of the insanity that's going on out there. So one of the first people that we meet is a guy who's pretty freaked out and wants to buy a whole bunch of drugs. And his buddy is laying on the couch, just completely zonked out. And I'm like, yeah, I can see a lot of people zonking out before the end of the world. But I just don't know why you would collect money for things if the whole thing is going down to the drain in a few days.
See, that did actually make sense to me. And I think they do actually address it a bit in the film because they do have a point where it's, there's possibly a bunker and you need money to get in there. And you've got money, don't you? And there's two aspects which make it like seem normal to me that would keep going. And one is the like, well, if if something did come along, if some group was trying to hold together and keep the monetary system going, then I'm not saying it's not delusional, but it is, I do believe that it's paper, it's light, it's easy, I'll hold on to it just in case for a rainy day, if that rainy day requires some kind of monetary system. If people are going to offer him money and give him money, then he's, yeah, I'll just suck this up. And also, like, if you've spent your whole life poor, then why not? You get to be like role playing some rich kind of power thing for the last couple of days. Like, that kind of works for me, which also ties into that it's like money is such like a totem and such a totem that is tied to so much sickness and mental health failures that it's like, our ability to let go of it is going to take a little time. It's like a knee-jerk reaction kind of thing. Like it's something that you do if you were like sleepwalking, you'd still be like, oh yeah, money, thank you. Because that's how everything functions and it's ground into our absolute marrow, much to our detriment. So I can see that still being like something that continues on. There were quite a few nice little bits here that I felt worked, that I felt really believable to me. There was like the kind of somewhat subtle, not subtle aspect that the underground market was still functioning while the above ground market had failed. That is, wait, you've got beer? Like, where did you get beer from? But it's, oh yeah, illicit substances. Oh yeah, here you go. Fucking have some. Here's this illicit substances everywhere. Go for it. It was like, beer? Where's the beer? And it's like, oh yeah, the corporate like aspects of society, the market that is official and sanctioned is like completely collapsed, while everybody else is like, oh yeah, no, we're used to like not having access and having to figure it out for ourselves. I like that. I thought that worked really well.
No, I agree with that. And it reminds me of, we talked last year about Panic in the Year Zero and the way that a nuclear bomb just hit LA in that movie. And people are just scrambling and, jacking up prices. And it becomes this huge struggle and fight for everything. Even just as part of our research for Spirits of the Air, Gremlins of the Clouds, this whole idea of, again, the world's going to end kind of thing. And people are just going absolutely batshit and just buying as much as they can and having problems around getting gas and all these things. So it is a different way of doing it where it is so much more quiet and just this kind of like very meditative thing. I like these little moments where our main character, and again, I don't know if it's drug induced or if he just is having these hallucinations or if there is something actual otherworldly, because we are introduced to this idea of these blue people, basically these scenes that are shot with a very strong blue light. And it's usually people that have died. I believe it's maybe, can't be his granny, but somebody's granny we see right off the bat. And then later on, we see a character named, I believe it is Ed, who's Montgomery Mauro, the director's brother. Though I have watched this film multiple times now, and it is really not good that we're introduced to Nick, who's played by Nick Smithson, pretty close to the beginning. He's that tweaker guy I mentioned. And then we're introduced to a character named Katie, who's Jennifer Lee Whitehead. And we see her quite a bit. She basically becomes the love interest, the damsel in distress-ish in this movie. So we see her associated with Nick, because we see Nick and then we see her right away. Later on, we see this guy, Ed, and then we see her right away. And I think she might be Ed's sister. And both Nick and Ed have facial hair, so I think they're the same person every single time I watch this movie.
Did you get a chance to watch that little short film I sent you, Modern Man?
Holy shit, that was hilarious.
How good is it? I can't believe nobody's seen it. And the guy who's the lead in that, yeah, John Reynolds, he also wrote Modern Man. I recommend everyone out there look up Modern Man 2023 starring John Reynolds. It's wonderful, beautiful, amazing short film that's pretty sure it's a New York film, from what I remember. And yeah, there's a character in Exposure 36 who the whole time he's on screen, I could not stop thinking about this short film, that he looks a bit like John Reynolds. And I just imagine that he has the same life off screen as the short film, Modern Man. Ed's the drug dealer, but he's a weed dealer, not a prescription dealer, hence why our main character is coming to him to sell him the prescription drugs. Nick is Katie's brother. So they are two separate people. It's Nick, who we see early on as a spirit. The Ed, I don't think we ever get to see as a spirit because he doesn't die until much later.
Oh, so he does come back. See, I kept mixing these characters up completely. And it's so dumb because they're both just white dudes with beards. And I'm like, they look identical to me and I couldn't figure them out. Oh, wow.
Obviously, one of them is his brother, the writer, director, editor's brother. And the other one's clearly like a mate. And they have done other short films together. So I think it's like, unfortunately, when you want to cast your mate and your family and they all look like they're related, it is just somewhat of a difficulty. But they are so we meet Nick and Katie together. Actually, we meet Katie a little earlier on in the street because she was coming out of Ed's. She was around Ed's house. And then we meet her again with her brother Nick, who's the one who's looking for the bottle opener and losing his shit. And he has the beer. And they clearly come from more well-off background, nice apartments, nicer clothes, all that kind of thing. And then Nick disappears. And our main protagonist, Cam, sees him in his apartment, in Cam's apartment, I think, as this spirit. And yeah, they are lit with a sort of blue light, but they also have like a fiery blue iris instead of like a human iris anymore. They're transcended in some way. And there isn't a big suggestion that Cam is partaking of his own stuff. I think like we learned that his background, that he has some sort of relationship with his, what's the word? I can't think of what the word is that they use. With a teacher of his who was photography teacher and was supposed to be helping him get into that world, and it didn't work out, and she died of a drug overdose, which some people in the film implies was suicide, some people it's just an accident. So I think that we can read that he is selling these drugs, but maybe not partaking of them because of that negative experience. we never really learn what the drug was that she overdosed from. So you could even read into it that he's very specifically like that I'm selling the prescription drugs to be trying to help people. Like he definitely explicitly states that he thinks that his purpose is to be helping people to smooth their way through these final days by checking out, which is very interesting and powerful and complicated because it's okay. There is a positive there, but also it feels like a bit of a cop of not dealing with anything and not confronting it, of just exiting. And especially given you can't say that a prescription drugs would be a better option given how America has like been dying from opioid crisis of prescription drugs for the last 15, 20 years. So it's like a real complicated like mess there, which the film like kind of lays out, but it doesn't really try to address or anything. There's some exposition-y moments here that do irritate me a bit because they feel like stuff where they didn't have faith in the audience. But the film never actually really stops for any actual exposition. There's no philosophizing or anything much really, which in some ways is a plus and in some ways is a minus. It's good because that stuff you can get really, really bogged down in, but also it just does mean that if you want to get something out of this film, you do need to watch it a couple of times and put the pieces together yourself. And I don't think that is done in a way that is very rewarding. It's good. It's cool. It's good, but it's not, oh, wow, this or that. It's not especially rich text, but it is there and it is putting forward some interesting ideas. But the character stuff, it is a little confusing on the first go round of who's who and why they're there. The character Ed, the drug dealer, he's got the easy part. He gets to be the slightly oddball, wacky guy. He's having fun. He has, I gotta say, like, his suicide note, absolutely one of my favorite suicide notes in cinema. It's that they pull it up and it's kind of scrawled so badly, and you hear the actor reading it on the voiceover, and you're like, huh? Okay, yeah. And match it fits everything we've learned about this guy, and it's beautiful and tremendous because he's spending most of the film trying to kill himself. He seems to be like, oh, I went down to the 4th Street Bridge, throw myself off, but there's so many people there. Like, it's real cute. Yeah, so he's come back. He just seems to keep going off to try and kill himself, and it's like things get in the way and he comes back. It was like the film really needed more of him. I feel like we needed to step away and split and go follow him for a bit and see like his weird journey day.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of levity otherwise. Like Cam is pretty darn serious.
Yeah, he's a very reserved character and we don't get much of him, which is very unfortunate. I was fascinated when I looked into the actor. Now, I wasn't sure how to pronounce his last name. You said Charles Oudo?
I said Oudo, yeah. Could be something else.
So he's Kenyan. And it wasn't until the last act of the film that I suddenly was like, oh, that's not an American accent. Watching it a second time, there was a couple of times like, okay, yeah, I can hear the intonation is different. And for a second I thought British, and I was like, oh no, that's English that comes from a British background, but that's an African accent, an African intonation in the way of speaking English. And I looked it up. Yeah, he's a Kenyan-born actor who's actually quite famous in Kenya. That was in a very popular soap opera called Makutano Junction, and has done a lot of stuff. And also, unfortunately, died on the 6th of February in 2024, which was almost exactly 2 years today when I watched the film. Very young, very unfortunate because he's very good. Without him, I'm not sure that this film would hold together very well. He's does bring a real strong, grounding, lived-in performance that I think is a bit limited by what the film is doing, but he definitely does very good work. And I do wonder if they maybe reduced how much he was talking because of trying to make him not appear like make him seem like he was an American, which is something I do find quite irritating about the film. It didn't need to be an American. There's nothing actually in here that makes it meaningful that he is from America. You've got this talented international actor with this whole background and everything, then take advantage of it. Let his voice speak. He does cover the accent very well, but as I said, I don't think that's to the positive outcome. I think it would have been a much more interesting film to have this person who is so far from home in this place, in a place which is the far from home for many, many, many people. It offers up so much more possibilities for ways to engage and ways to look at the city and see the city through different eyes. And one of the first people we meet is a homeless woman who has such a brutal Australian accent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she does. And I was like, random Aussie woman on the street.
Yeah, I can't remember if we've talked about this previously, but that's the accent, the Australian accent that I think Americans are more familiar with, because it tends to be what the accents from New South Wales sounds like more, which is where a lot of filmmaking happens, when a lot more international filmmaking happens. So that's the accent people know. Oh, yeah, Aussie. And it's like versus the lower down end where I am, where it's a bit more chill. But even that, you've got another foreigner there, and it's stick with that person. Have these two people from like totally different places, both colonies of England, and explore that. And it instead, she's just like a brief bit at the beginning, and then we see her dead later and her spirit. And he cuts in these two shots of her from before as if we don't know who she is. And that was one of the bits that was like visual exposition, was like, have some faith in your film and your audience. This person, we did know who she was.
Yeah, she wasn't a white guy wearing a beard. Yes, yeah, and being obnoxious. Because I think his whole search for the corkscrew where he's losing his shit, it just felt very Ed-like to me, having just met Ed. Maybe not even 5 minutes between seeing these two characters, and I'm just, who are these guys now? Yeah, thinking they're one and the same.
Yeah, I did catch some hints of some Jersey accents, I think, in here as well. So I feel like maybe the background is a bit Jersey, that they're drawing on some personal experiences of Jersey guys there. But I don't know huge amounts of that other than like from cinema and random podcasts. But it's, yeah, Charles Oudo, he does a really good job. Seems like an interesting dude. When I was just looking him up, there was lots of stuff. The only place I could see anywhere that they talked about how he died was lots of random YouTube clips. And I'm just like, I'm not clicking on those. I think that's probably not anything anybody needs to watch, because everything else was just like very quiet. But he seems like there was an interesting fellow there. I saw that he did some voiceover work on a documentary about an intersex person in Kenya, I think, which apparently is quite good and is available on YouTube, called Sydney and Friends. So I wonder what his story was. I wonder, was he stuck in America during the COVID things? Or was he trying to break out there? Yeah, there's an interesting figure there, and I'm glad we've at least got like something like this a bit to see what could have been. Some of the acting in the film is a bit rough. It's not terrible. It's just amateur. It's just people who aren't really used to film. I don't think I did see quite a few comments on Letterboxd of people really ripping into the acting, and I really didn't think it was that bad. I think those people need to watch more bad acting to know what bad acting is. I thought, was it a Jennifer Lee Whitehead who plays Katie, that she was pretty good. There's definite potential there. She is quite young, which was the thing I was like, I didn't catch that so much the first time round. They mentioned this as being an Australian and not being as familiar with certain aspects of American culture. But he says, when they're discussing and talking about not finishing school, and Cam says, oh yeah, I was a college dropout, and she says high school. And I was like, wait, that's Googling the difference. What is the age of high school in America? And it was like, high school here would be, like 13 to 18, 19 or something, which is about the same for America. So the implication there is that she is hopefully 18. Yeah, that was something that I was like, okay, it is a film which made me remember how tired I am of heterosexual cinema. That it's just, oh yeah, we've got to have some sort of damsel in distress, and she needs to be protected. And she also needs to spend almost the entire film in a boob tube kind of top with no bra. I don't think that part worked at all. I thought she was quite good. I thought their friendship was quite good, that it offered up things. But once it turned into, oh no, there has to be some sort of thriller antagonist narrative, that stuff was just like, we didn't need this. This wasn't the path to go down to fill out your film.
That whole plot that you're talking about, that comes so late in the film too. There's a lot of this film that feels like a One Crazy Night type of a movie, like an After Hours, or even I suppose Miracle Mile would be a more apropos thing where you know that the world is going to end. And you're talking about like how you have to watch this film a few times to really pick up on what's going on. One of the things is that there is a radio at the beginning that starts talking about this mayoral race and how there's this racist piece of shit guy who's running for mayor. And so obviously it's 2021, we are definitely talking about Donald Trump here as New Yorker, all this kind of stuff. And that really doesn't enter into the picture until when, like 40, 50 minutes into it, if not more. Like, it really comes late and then becomes like the driving force, whereas it feels like there's the quest of taking these photographs, but there's no other quest that he's on throughout this until suddenly it's, I have to find Nick, I have to find Katie's brother kind of thing. And that, I think it's literally 40 minutes into the film when he comes over and finds her completely beaten up and she's got blood on her hands and just something bad has happened. It just feels really shoved in there for me.
Yeah, it did feel shoved in there. It is trickled a bit, as I said, in the radios talking about this guy. But the way it's trickled in is like the most basic way, is that we have this image of, it's like a circle with a bird in black silhouette.
Oh, we even get an iris in on that card when he goes over to the woman's place, Lulu, the Lisa Reynolds character. And he sits down and that card is on the table. And man, oh man, did it take me a while to spot that after I watched this the second or third time. Then I was like, oh, that's what they're pointing out. And like literally like irising in on that table and this tiny little card. And then I was like, oh my God, very subtle.
I know, like, at the moment we're like got all the Epstein stuff coming out, it's like these people are not subtle about anything. These like networks of blah, blah, blah. But my God, this company, this drug dealer, this mayor is just, he's not hiding the fact that he has this bird picture everywhere. Like his Goomba henchman has, sorry, is that a racial slur? Anyway, his henchman has a tattoo of it on his hand, which looks a bit more like a speed bump for the angle they were shooting. And I was like, no, wait, I think it's meant to be the bird. They've got it on their matchbox for the club. It's the emblem for the club. It's on the baggies for the drugs they're selling. It's like, guys, like, one of your henchmen got a marketing PhD and like, he needs to calm down and stop snorting coke and marketing your drug business the same as your bar business and everything else. That was like so on the nose, and just, guys, you clearly maybe just either not thought about this or never actually spent any time around these kinds of people. Like, that's not how it works at all, and it just feels real shoehorned in, and yet is somehow the way that they're trying to make it feel less shoehorned in once they shoehorn the filler plot in. And it's, okay, you flubbed this so much that I almost appreciate it. It's so silly. It feels like they could have done that a lot more better just by having like another character come in who is supportive of this dude. There's nothing of anything we never get. It's just this total alien thing, which you could even make something of that. The people who, you can spend so much time in whole groups of people who aren't supportive of like Donald Trump or who was there is the actual awful, most recent evil New York mayor, the one who was trying to run again, the one who lost to Mamdani. Yeah, I think he's maybe meant to be more that, but yeah, I feel like there's definitely like ways that they could have folded that character in better and made more of it. And it certainly is one aspect that actually has, like, the past previous couple of years have backed up the film, that there would be just random rich slumlord psychos who would be like, no, I've still got to be mayor in the apocalypse.
we're still running this whole mayoral campaign. Okay, great. That was Eric Adams.
No, they was the Democrat, the Republican. Classic New York. You can't narrow it down. Eric Adams is the one who would be the funniest man on earth if he wasn't like part of the problem.
No, Eric Adams was the guy that was mayor before Mandami, and he's the one that.
Yeah, but he didn't run against him. He bailed out early.
Oh, Cuomo.
Cuomo, there we go. This guy's definitely got Cuomo vibes.
Yeah, because Eric Adams, he had that whole like bribery and all that stuff. Because I remember that was one of Mandami's first things was to like anything that this guy put through over the last 18 months, we're just rescinding.
If you haven't looked up some of the Eric Adams stuff online, that is the funniest shit. He's New York is the Athens of America. New York is the Budapest of America. Oh man, funniest, weirdest dude in town. I admit that coming around to watch this for the second time, I was dreading the last act of this film. Like on the first viewing, the last act just rubbed me wrong in so many ways for just the things that I'm really tired of with low budget independent filmmaking, where it just, this is what we're doing. Like, this is the same old, done this a million times. And it's like, it's just, can you do anything good with it? Have you got something up your sleeve? It's not really. And I will admit, like on the second go round, I think I enjoyed the second half a bit more than I enjoyed the first half the second time, which I wasn't expecting. Like I thought it'd be the other way around. And part of it was just being in that independent space and it clearly being like people in your sphere or connected family, semi-professionals, whatever, and you're pulling them in. And I did actually like enjoy the weird kind of touches of humanity that came through because of that. It breezed past them too quickly, but the stuff that the two henchmen who he sees in the car, and then later he like smacks one of them in the head pretty badly, and we find out that he died overnight from that injury. And which is that actually is like, yeah, you get a solid concussion and you don't get a health treatment because A, it's America, and B, it's the apocalypse. Yeah, you're gonna die in your sleep. You don't go to sleep if you've been smacked in the head with a big heavy lamp. That's your health advice from Projection Booth Podcast. But there was a real humanity that kind of came through there between the two henchmen and the way his buddy who survived reacted, and it didn't bleed through to anything else. Like the evil mayor dude didn't give a shit. They were just facts to him. But there was like these little bits and pieces there that felt true, that they did feel they were coming from somewhere. It's funny. I just watched a film. This is a random film that I found from this. There's an Australian company, like two companies called like Flashback Entertainment. They put out like stuff that nobody cares about. And so 20 years ago, instead of being on Tubi, Exposure 36 probably would have got released through that. There's so many of those kind of films that just nobody would care about, that they chucked together themselves, that they probably got a small deal with some like agent and got sold, whatever. So we watched this film recently called The Drop from 2006. It's directed by Kevin Lewis, who would go on to do Willy's Wonderland, the Nicolas Cage Five Nights at Freddy film, and Pig Hill, which I've heard quite good things about recently. Some guy who's been working away in like very low budget indie stuff for a while, and somehow some sort of broken through recently. And The Drop and Exposure 36 actually have a lot of things in common. They're very small scale. The Drop definitely leans a bit more on its like thriller genre-y tropes than this one does, but there's like a bit of a fantasy sci-fi element that comes in later on that's to do with more to the universe kind of stuff. But it's like very much like the young bloke who's confronted by these slumlord mafia guys like, oh, just do this job first and don't ask any questions and it'll all be fine. And of course he like goes against that. It is actually funny how much they were similar, but at opposite ends of the spectrum, because where Exposure 36 feels, and I think you said is taking inspiration from a film like Abel Ferrara's 444 Last Day on Earth. The Drop is Tarantino plus Run Lola Run. And Run Lola Run takes up like 70% of that. Like the whole film is edited just like, what is this pounding like late 90s, early 2000s techno thing? And it's just going absolutely balls to the wall for most of it. And The Drop also wasn't like a great film, but it just went for it a lot more. And it was more, yeah, let's just do crazy stuff, have some weird things. Definitely helped a bit more by having John Savage and Sean Young being your bad guys. Like they're sleepwalking through it and bringing a lot.
It's funny that you bring up Run Lola Run, because when he starts taking those photographs, I noticed that the photographs don't necessarily line up to the same angles or anything. Like they definitely took the photographs later. It's not like they took these pictures from the actual film and just like black and whiteified them, drained out the color, those kind of things. But whenever he takes a photograph and the whole kind of movie stops for a second, I so thought of those transitions from Run Lola Run, where you see the potential future history of people. And then bringing up Tarantino is also very apropos. Those two henchmen, I totally was thinking of like Tarantino people. Moreover, I don't know how similar our ages are. I think you're a little bit younger than me, but you probably lived through that entire thing of once Reservoir Dogs came out, everybody was like, I can make a cheap gangster film. Moreover, once Pulp Fiction came out, it was, I can make a cheap gangster film. Some of them were decent, but for every, I don't know, one decent one, there were probably 1,000 shitty ones that most likely didn't even make it any place other than some kid's basement kind of thing. There's a VHS tape shoved somewhere in some box in somebody's basement, which was My Gangster Film 1996 type of thing. And yeah, I was thinking of that when it came to those two thugs, where it was just like, oh, they're fighting like the two henchmen in To Shoot the Piano Player or something. And it brought me back to that, but not really in a good way.
Yeah, as I said, like the fact that it's like culturally specific, I think saves it a little bit. That it doesn't feel as shoehorned in, because it is that kind of New York slumlord. These are his henchmen kind of thing. Like that worked, and they didn't lean too heavily on it. But yeah, you can't. Yeah, as you said, for people of a certain age who lived through a certain VHS era, you just hit that stuff and just start twitching. PTSD flashbacks.
Yeah, you still see those henchmen hanging around in things like the Equalizer series with Denzel Washington. Okay, yeah. Oh, he's the funny one. Oh, he's the serious one. Oh, he's got the Russian accent. Like, going back to what you were talking about with our main character being an immigrant, literal immigrant to our shores, works when it comes to this whole idea of this Trump stand-in mayor character. And by the way, those scenes with the Trump stand-in, they so remind me of The Departed, or like the one where Johnny Depp played the Whitey Bulger. It's like student film Whitey Bulger type of thing. Our main characters are a black guy and a woman. And had he been an immigrant, I think it would have hit probably even harder, because we are just all about, let's kick all the immigrants out of our country.
It does take like clear stands in some places by like having a slumlord as a villain and such, but otherwise it feels like it's trying not to talk about anything to its detriment. There was, hang on, let's see if I can find it. And I was doing some brief bit of rummaging on some other apocalyptic kind of things. I did find this quote. This is from Christopher Sharrett's The American Apocalypse, Scorsese's Taxi Driver. As the film deconstructs and debunks the conventions of various film genres, it provides not ideological criticism, but the ahistorical and fatalistic vision of apocalypticism. This apocalypse is catastrophic and non-revelatory, since alternative concepts of reality are beyond consideration. Which I think actually like really gets to like the core of this film, that it is actually very emblematic of this period in history. There is no alternative ideological construct. There is no alternative possibilities. It's just a very fatalistic, even like down to there's. I want to talk about the spirits again a little bit, but the way it's presented is just, oh, it's just this climate catastrophe kind of thing. It's just biology, science, environmentalism. There's a little line about how it's or human like negativity has helped feed all this, but there's nothing else. It's like we've been set on this path and it's going to happen, and there's no pushing in any direction, and there's no arguing, there's no grandstanding. It's just this fatalistic, we're in the apocalypse, and that's it. And I don't think the film does anything with that, but it is emblematic and it is very representative of this period and the kind of fatalism that is really grinding the gears off of people and communities and society as a whole. I am grateful that the film doesn't necessarily try to be more than what it is. I'm really grateful that there's no edgelord bullshit. I'm glad there's not a psychopath or anything like that. That the villain is just a piece of shit, white-collared douchebag. That feels right and correct, and I praise him on recognizing that was like all the villain he needed. If he needed it, really, is the only question.
The most edgelord I think we get is the ants that are in his office and how he has to pick up the ant and talk about the power of the ants and all these kind of things. Okay, yeah, here's your metaphor. All right, I gotcha.
Yeah, but even that feeds into this like no imagination. Like it's the most basic kind of metaphor that somebody like that could reach for. It's so unelucidating other than about his psychology. And one question I wanted to ask was, do you think that the quotation mark spirits that he sees a manifestation of optimism in the film?
As far as they have made it to the other side, because there's that marquee that says, see you on the other side, that we see during a little photo montage.
Yeah, and people will say that kind of thing and they'll talk about there being more, but we do seem to have an actual manifestation of proof that there is some other side, if they are not a nation or anything. Because I don't find the film to be pessimistic. There is a dash of optimism in there, as this is the kind of a back door. And I don't know how I feel about that, but it's interesting. And what do you think?
I think that is very, very intentional. I think that these spirits are showing us that there is more. And I think that's also, and I hate to go back to this, but this whole idea of the whole Ed versus Nick thing that I was having problems with is because we don't necessarily see Nick die. We just see him alive, and then we see him again as a spirit, and then we're supposed to think that he has died. And by the way, when they're doing the spirit effects, I love the eye thing. You mentioned that before. I absolutely love what they're doing with the eyes, and especially that they are blinking. So you see whatever they're doing. I don't know if they're animating those in or what they're doing, but the blinks really add a lot to it. And yeah, it's like we never see him dead. And then when Ed enters back into the film later on, I was like, oh, Nick's actually not dead. Here he is. Or whoever this character is, this Ed Nick guy. But yeah, no, I definitely think that they're showing us that there's hope. And I think the very first one that we see, it talks about the old lady. I think I'm led to believe that she might have committed suicide just from the way that she's set up. And then, yeah, his friend, the Australian woman, she dies from violence. You can see the blood around her. But yeah, she's there looking on, and we can see her give him a look. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it feels like not necessarily like he's being looked over, that there's an angel on his shoulder, but that they have moved on to a new plane. Because that last shot of the film is probably the most apocalyptic that we get. They're on the train, they're leaving. He takes his last photograph, and then we pull out from the train or tilt up, and we see the smoke coming from all of these buildings. But then we also see this massive cloud front coming in from the right side of the screen. And it's okay. I think that's it. I think that is going to be coming in here and wiping us off the face of the earth. But having had those visions, I agree with you. It does give us a glimmer of hope.
Of course, there is the possibility that that is him, not necessarily hallucinating, but him convincing himself that it's okay. Because as I said, we never actually see that Nick is dead. He is visited by this spirit that is Nick with the eyes, who talks to him and tells him such. But is that like because he's keeps trying to convince Katie, that your brother is dead, you need to like let it go. And his basis for that is the visitation. So it could just be him. He's like trying to convince himself that there's more, that these people are just dead, that they do go on to something else. And also as a way to, no, your brother's dead. Like, I know because I don't think he actually says that, but yeah, there is a suggestion in what Nick says when he visits him that he may be in hell. Like the way he talks does have like that it's bad down here or something. I think it's a good title to talk about some other films that clearly have inspired this, because first, like I got to say that I think the lady, the elderly lady who he sees at the beginning, I think that's his landlady.
Oh, okay.
Because when he's standing at the door buzzing, you can see he's holding an envelope and it says on it "rent" in big letters, and it feels like really blatant. Like we're not communicating properly who this is. Wait, if we write "rent" on the envelope. I was like, yeah, I got it. I saw it. I think that's what I was meant to get. I think that's meant to be his landlady, and that's what that is. And part of then what made me think that more is that you mentioned that Mackenzie, a big inspiration for this film, was Abel Ferrara's 444 Last Day on Earth. And watching that film, you can see how they're very different films in a lot of ways, but you can feel how he's sort of reshuffled the deck a bit, that there's a lot of elements that they have in common, and he's moved them around in different ways. And that in that film, Willem Dafoe's character very specifically yells at his like shitty landlord who kind of looks a bit like the mayor guy in this. And I was like, I feel like it's New York. If you're going to be riffing on an Abel Ferrara film, you're going to have a little landlord moment in here. But in this one, it seems positive more than negative. Yeah, that was just those kind of two bits made me think, okay, I think she's the landlady. I think that's what the deal is.
I think we should probably take a little bit of a break, and we can hear Mr. Mauro talk about his inspirations for this one, and we'll be back with that right after these brief messages.
Fear comes home. Nowhere is safe. Prepare to scream. Buy or rent Scream 7 on digital now. It'll be a killer time.
Looking for something superior to streaming? A place with more than 5 times the selection available on all of the streaming services combined? Check out Scarecrow Video's Rent by Mail service. Select from an unparalleled collection of over 150,000 films and get Blu-rays, 4Ks, and DVDs delivered directly to your door. Get in on it now at scarecrow.com and rediscover the wonders of physical media. Can you tell me how you got involved in show business and entertainment?
It's something I always wanted to be a part of. It's what I grew up doing. Like so many filmmakers, they grew up making movies with their friends and their siblings and stuff like that. And that's what I always wanted to do. And I always knew I wanted to direct and write and make my own movies, because that's what I spent so much of my childhood doing. And I always tell the story. One of my favorite films is The Shining. And when I used to watch it on TV, there's a famous shot where you see the helicopter shadow. And I always said I wanted to be the guy in the helicopter shooting it. Years later, you find out that Kubrick was not in the helicopter. So I went to college. I thought filmmaking was a pipe dream. I started doing pre-law stuff. And then my senior year, I realized I could not do any more school. So right when I got into New York, I started working as a PA, as a runner, getting any job on set I could. And that slowly led me into editing. And now I do that professionally. And during all that time, I've been writing and producing our own shorts and finally the feature. That's how we got to Exposure 36.
Tell me about some of your shorts. What are those like?
When things weren't really like going the way I wanted to in New York, I had a friend who was moving to Sydney, Australia. So I was stuck, and I said to him, I wish I could just pick up my bags and do the same thing. And he was like, why don't you just come with me? So I went to Sydney and I took some film classes and got the 101 of filmmaking, that the hands-on experience as opposed to stuff you see secondhand or you see from a distance on set or stuff you read in books. So there I made a science fiction short film called Duration of Stay. When I got back to the States, my brother, who is a collaborator of mine, we put together a heist comedy called Dan's Plan. And then we did another short, or we did two other shorts. One was called Red Mosquito, which was a zombie horror movie. And then the final one, we just took a camera, went out and filmed something quickly that we never really finished, but just to see what we could put together in a day. And so that led us up to 2017, I think. And at that point, we were just, let's start writing this feature, getting the script in good shape to shoot. It's funny, we actually started with another one, and then we rewrote that. And we said, we're not going to have the budget for this. So we picked up Exposure 36 again, quickly rewrote that, and then we went out to shoot shortly after that.
Where did the idea for Exposure 36 come from?
My first influence for that movie was 444 Last Day on Earth by Abel Ferreira. And what I liked about that was that it was an end of the world movie, but it didn't feel like it necessarily, because everybody's going about their business. And at one point, like, he orders Thai food, and then I think there's some discrepancy about how they're going to tip him or something. And I just found that so fascinating that you could have such a high concept and do it on such a low budget. Now, granted, they had Willem Dafoe, but I just thought that was so interesting that something so catastrophic can be approaching, but people will just be going about their day, business as usual. We're to a certain extent in a car crash in slow motion where you can see problems coming up, but we're not really addressing them. So I thought we'll just compress that into a weekend, basically. And as these people approach a Monday, which nobody ever likes to, and no one ever likes to start of the week, then just shorten that and give it the similar idea. So that's where I got the idea. And then I was a big fan in the mid 2010s of Take Shelter by Jeff Nichols. And I liked, when I read interviews with him, how he spoke about how he just took anxieties he was having as becoming a father. And I think he was dealing with someone in his family who had mental illness. And I thought that was a good metaphor for what I was dealing with at the time and the anxieties I was dealing with about not having enough time to get what I wanted to get done. That's how we came up with the whole premise.
How did the whole feature come together once you said, okay, this is what we're going to work on?
It was kind of like we had the script. We just said, it took a long time for us to cast. It took like almost a year to get all our cast in order and all the pre-production and everything. So it was like a slow build, but we really just did not have any money whatsoever. We went into production. We thought we would be able to cobble together more, and we had nothing. So everybody was working at minimum, and we just went out and shot it in 12 days. And we did a crowdfunding campaign on the back end to help us raise money to either pay back what we had done during production or to finish it. And we ended up raising $40,000 to help us pay for some stuff during production, finishing, and then for film festivals and stuff like that.
You said that it took a long time to cast this. Why such a long time?
One way to approach casting, especially with a project, is just to put it on backstage and have everybody submit their headshots and resumes and reels and all that stuff. But we just weren't finding what we needed. And so we started finding other avenues of finding actors. Katie, Jennifer Lee Whitehead, the lead actress, she was at NYU. NYU was one of the programs I emailed, and I said, who are some of the actors that you have that are graduating this spring? And so a lot of them just said, hey, just send me the casting call and I'll put it up for them. And so we ended up finding a lot of people that way. Charles was like through an acting group that we had gotten in touch with. It's not, especially when you're working a full-time job, Monday through Friday, and you're only working on the weekends, getting people to come in and audition for each role it was basically one full day for each role. That can take weeks at a time when you're only doing it on a Saturday or a Sunday and stuff like that. And then we had a production designer drop out last minute, so that pushed us. And it's just, when you don't have the resources and the money, it's good to, something that my time in Australia taught me was, it's good to do all the prep you can possibly do going into it. I did all my own storyboards, did all the shot lists, broke down the script. Like, this sounds like a no-brainer stuff, but it's amazing how many people actually don't do that. So we wanted to make sure that we had everything to fall back on so that we were ready when we were on set and stuff like that. So it took a long time.
Where was the shot on locations?
There's one set at the final scene with Curry. That's a set. But yeah, other than that, it's all location.
How did you find those?
A lot of apartments that we were just friends of ours. Ham's apartment is actually me and my now wife's apartment, or she was my wife at the time too. So I told her to get out for the weekend. Didn't really tell her how extensive the shooting would be. Trashed the place. It smelled like cigarettes for a week after, but yeah. And then there was Nick's apartment. The beginning has this beautiful view, and it's got these huge windows. And someone just happened to say, "Hey, my mom has this great apartment. Why don't you guys come shoot at it?" And we got it for free. So and then on the streets and stuff, it was just run and gun. Any place we could find to shoot, we took advantage of it.
How did you keep moving and just driving yourself forward with something like this? Because I know that making a movie is not easy, and especially you're making it, like you said, on weekends. It sounds like it's all from poverty. It's not like somebody's handing you a big old check and being like, "Here you go, Mackenzie, go ahead and make this big old movie."
I think we were just so driven. It's hard to think about the motivation that we had to make this at the time, because it took so much energy, and I just don't have that. I don't have the energy to say right now, I'm going to go out, I'm going to cast all these roles, I'm going to crew up and then go out and shoot this thing with no money. It just seems like it's bizarre, but it was a whirlwind. We were just like, we created a really good schedule. We knew exactly what we were shooting, when we were shooting it, on what day. And we just went into it head first. Literally did not stop. Like we never watched dailies at the end of the day, because we didn't want to get hung up and be like, "Oh, we got to go reshoot that." There was talk at one point that we would only do one take per scene, but that didn't end up happening. But it was really just like, just go out and just bang it out as efficiently as possible. And if we hit a snag or something, it's like, just keep going and we'll figure it out. It's just a product of being a little younger, a little dumber, maybe. But yeah, it was really just go, go, go.
Tell me a little bit about your crew.
My younger brother, he played Ed in Exposure 36, did a lot of is an actor and starred in a lot of the shorts as well. So he was a good collaborator to have, bounce ideas off when we were firming up the script. And then I have a great producing partner, Michael Paisano, who's a filmmaker in his own right, does a lot of shorts. And he was a great producer to help me get the ball rolling on this. Then we were lucky enough to we had some sound guys we worked with who were from Paris that we got connected with when we made a web series years ago. So we used them. And then I needed a camera guy, but I was planning to shoot the whole thing myself. And then pretty much a couple weeks before production, I sat down with a guy who had just graduated from film school. And I was like, yeah, we need somebody to be the technical guy who is, what's a DIT, camera operator, guy who knows what lens to put on and stuff like that. So I can focus on the actors at those times and stuff like that. And we ended up just saying, "Hey man, you're the DP for this project, so let's go do it." So we pieced it together, but primarily it was my brother and my producing partner. We really got the ball rolling with us three.
How long was that initial shoot, and did you have to go back for many pickups afterwards?
We did 12 days, 12 straight days. Maybe we had a day off somewhere in there. And then once I started cutting it, I realized some things I was missing. So then we actually went to a studio for that too. And those are a lot of like the flashbacks with his girlfriend. There were some close-ups we picked up or some inserts. This was also all right before COVID. And then once we went into lockdown, there were still some things I needed to pick up. So I was basically at my in-laws' house, like with my DSLR, like shooting inserts every now and then. I found an ant like outside on their deck and I grabbed it and put it in a cup. And then the close-up of him with the ant in his fingers is just my hand, like in my in-laws' house during COVID. It was things like that I kind of had to stitch together as I went on because, as you probably know, 12 days run and gun, it's like you're going to forget some things and you're going to have to do obviously some pickups as you go along. Even though the shorts are a great way to learn your process, you can never really prepare yourself for a feature, let alone a feature with no money whatsoever and zero time and stuff like that. So because we've made ourselves jacks of all trades, it didn't require us to do these big elaborate reshoots on anything or put us in a position in post where it was like, no, we got everything we needed. It's just like some texture was needed to fill in some spots. But
what did you actually cut this on?
I cut it on Premiere. At the time, I preferred Avid, Media Composer, but when you have no budget and you have to do everything in one program, I found that cutting in Premiere Pro was most efficient for us because not to get too technical with it, but there's a proxy feature where you can just turn off and on the raw camera file. So exporting a final was like a cinch. I mean, it took a long time, but made it a lot easier. In Avid, it becomes a lot more difficult to do that. So
what's your post process like? Are you constantly churning out like here's my rough cut, get it looked at by some people? Or
I think I took a month off after we were done. We shot in July in like the hottest summer. It was like the hottest week of a summer in New York in like a few years. It was like 110 degrees or something one of the days. And it was just brutal, like all being stuffed in our apartment, trying to get the day done, but you're pumping the AC in between takes and whatever. I think I took a month off before I started editing, and then it probably took me a few months to get a cut. I sat down with my brother and my producing partner and our DP and maybe one of our other producers, and I showed them a cut. We were all pretty happy with it, but there were a few things that we were bumping up against. And so it was just feeling out how we were going to those moments. The opening is something that sticks out in my mind in particular. It was him in the apartment and then him meeting the homeless woman outside. And then I remember I sat down, I was just like, we're going to blend those two and just intercut. When I did it at the time, it worked really well. If I'm looking at it now, I'd probably change some things, but that's a time that sticks out in my mind where it's just like, how can we rework this in the edit to streamline it a little bit?
How long did it take you to go through the whole editing process?
It was probably close to a year, especially COVID. It was like, I think I had a assembly cut within a few months, probably in November of 2019. And then, I remember, like I said, I was still putting stuff together and refining during COVID and lockdown. And then once I got back to the city, to my apartment, it was the whole finishing process. So I worked with a composer to try to get something, and that obviously takes some time, and then coloring, and then going back and conforming the whole picture with special effects and stuff. So I think it took almost a year.
What's the plan for you as you're trying to get this thing to the finishing line?
Yeah, so our plan the whole time was festivals, which we've never had luck at. So I said to my brother at the beginning, I know exactly how this is going to turn out when we start submitting to festivals, but right now that's the best way to do it, or 5 years ago it was. So sent a lot of emails to people hoping they could connect us with the right people or knew somebody at a festival or whatever. We had an executive producer come on who just happened to come across the movie on IMDb and was like, oh, I like the premise of this. Can I see a cut? We're like, yeah, sure. And he said, oh, I'd love to come on as executive producer and I'll help you try to get into some film festivals. So that was our goal. He eventually hooked us up with the distributor, Gravitas Ventures, who offered to distribute the movie. So that was pretty exciting. Not something we had expected after trying to get the film into festivals during COVID, but we were really happy with that. So the distribution model for independent filmmakers is whatever, but it's better than nothing. It's better than, especially when you have your festival run is not as extensive as you would have liked it to have been.
I remember it was very tough with the festivals and everything moving online. And I know that it wasn't easy during that time, even just as a film fan and covering movies.
A lot of people were like, we're taking half the movies we normally take. And I was like, all right. My thought was, I had no idea COVID was coming, obviously, but a movie about the end of the world where people are like stuck inside, I didn't want to push it to a year later where everybody else was putting out movies expressing their anxieties and feelings about that time. So I was like, do it now, because by the time, if we wait a year, it's just going to be like, it's another COVID movie. I thought we were fortunate in that, like, during our campaign, we could be like, we shot some of this and cut it during COVID, and it's about this indirectly. I just really didn't want to wait a year to when the festivals were like, oh, we're accepting more movies now, we're programming more movies, but still, like I said, we've never had success at these festivals, so I'm not putting all my eggs in the festival basket. We had I went to Sci-Fi London. I spoke to the head of the festival there, and he also was just like, yeah, it's a hard movie to program. And I asked him to elaborate on that, which he didn't. So I think it's a combination of those things, like COVID, and then it's maybe a hard movie to program. I don't know.
When do you finally get to see the movie with an audience?
Because it was COVID, we had plans to try to get theaters, take it on our tour, because the composer who I worked with on this, he had done something where he was reaching out to people, communities in classical music in different cities, and then going there and putting on a show for people who were part of that community. And he was getting a good attendance. So I was like, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that as well. And then nobody was going to movie theaters. So the first time I saw it with an audience was at London Sci-Fi. I found out it got in and I was super excited. And I was like, it was October 2021. I was like, I have to do this. I got to get out there. I flew out. I got to the film festival. The place was packed. I was like, oh, amazing. This is wonderful. And then there was like a 24-hour shorts competition that was playing in the adjacent theater next to mine. And all those people were there for that. And I go into the theater. It was like 15 people, but it was like nice to see it on a big screen. I had a Q&A afterwards. So to this day, the most people I've seen it with is probably like 15 people. It's on a big screen. So it was a unique situation because of COVID, but it's great to get to those festivals and screen it for people who were interested in checking it out. So,
well, once the film gets out there, how's it received?
If you look on Rotten Tomatoes, it has some good reviews from critics. It got a good write-up in the LA Times. It got a recommendation in the New York Times. It got some good write-ups from critics, online critics, stuff like that. And I was pretty thrilled. Again, that was a huge process where we got a database of like every critic in North America and maybe the UK. And we just were writing emails every day, probably, 20 emails a day for a few weeks and just trying to get anybody to review it. So we were pretty positive. Like, obviously you're always going to get some reviews that don't really understand the vision or just think it's just low budget crap or whatever, but we were mostly pretty happy with the response we got. So that's good.
After it's out and people have had a chance to see it, it's out on DVD and all that, you go, okay, that's it. Time to make another one.
I had mentioned that we had started originally on another project, another feature, which is like a Bonnie and Clyde, like Lovers on the Lamb movie that always what I wanted to do. And so that was just lined up for whenever somebody said, what's next? And so right after we had finished and we got picked up for distribution, I went right back to that script and I looked at it and I was like, all right, now it's time to get started on this. I reread it and I was like, this isn't going to work at all. So I started from scratch again, rewrote that whole thing. The connections we had made during Exposure 36, we tried to build on those and build our network out and see if we could figure out a way to make this. But right now, that doesn't seem like a project that we couldn't find financing for it. So some other projects that we're trying to put together now. So we'll see how that turns out.
And you said you edit to pay the bills?
Yeah, I was at a post-production house for a few years and now I'm working freelance, mostly commercials. But if I can get my hands on a film, short, feature, I jump at the opportunity. But yeah, day to day, it's commercials.
You mentioned Abel Ferrara, you mentioned Kubrick. I see the Kubrick book behind you. Who are some of your biggest influences when it comes to actually making your own movies?
The big guys are Kubrick, Scorsese, Tarkovsky, Wim Wenders, and then more recently, me and my buddy always say we were early on board of Christopher Nolan. Like we were celebrating when he got Batman Begins, and now he's like obviously the biggest filmmaker in the world. So that's more recent. I mean, you can start to get pretty cliche. But Kubrick and Scorsese are like my two guys I always go back to. They're like comfort films for me, so I can always turn on something and be happy, and always try to learn from those movies as much as I can, because I think those two guys are the masters. I'm probably forgetting somebody extremely vital, but yeah, those are the masters to me.
What's funny, you mentioned all the different types of shorts that you're doing and, sci-fi, road movie, this, that. And I was just like, man, this guy's hopping genres like crazy. Zombie movie, very much like Kubrick and Scorsese. They are not slavish to one genre over another.
Yeah, I was kind of actually thinking about that the other day. I was cleaning up my Vimeo and my YouTube accounts and just to clear up some space. And I'm like, oh, some of my shorts and stuff are on there. And I was like, I just started scrubbing through them. And I was like, oh, these are all different genres. Like I tried different things every time. And I was really happy that I'm sure I've thought about this before, but that's something I've always been interested in, is just try something new every time. And when I start to see repetition in my work, even as I write, like I'm writing all the time. And if I see repetition in my scripts or something like that, repeated motifs or repeating genres or whatever, it makes me uncomfortable. So I try to, I guess I've tried to mix it up as much as possible.
Is there a good place for people to keep up with you and your work online?
I mean, my website is MackenzieMauro.com. I have an edit account, MGMauro_edit. And then Exposure 36 has its own Instagram page, which is Exposure 36 Film. I'm gearing up to put together a short, so I'm hoping to have more content to put out that people can follow and keep tabs on. But for now, it's just chipping away and trying to get pre-production in a good place. I said to somebody the other day, like, if I could put up a canvas in my office and just paint, it'd be a lot easier and a lot cheaper. But unfortunately, that's not my art form. So you keep chipping away, and it's a need to do it. So it's not like it's not really optional. So I'll do my best to try to get this one off the ground, and we'll take it from there.
Well, Mr. Mauro, thank you so much for your time. This was great talking with you.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Mike. Thanks for checking out the movie. I'm looking forward to hearing the episode.
All right, we are back, and we were talking about Exposure 36. And yeah, before we took our break, we were talking about some of the inspirations. It took a lot for me to watch 444 Last Days on Earth, just because I like a lot of Abel Ferrara stuff, but when he's off big time. So I never know when I'm going to turn on a film and be disappointed if it's an Abel Ferrara film, because he's got such a particular thing. But we got Willem Dafoe in this, and he is always awesome, always elevates the material. Yeah, I would say he always elevates the material. Like, he's my favorite part of a lot of movies where I don't like the rest of the movie, like Autofocus, which I know is a Paul Schrader, not a Ferrara, but his relationship with both Schrader and Ferrara, I love that he works so much with those guys and just how well he works with them. And I guess Lars von Trier is the next guy that he works with a lot as well.
Yeah, I have a similar relation with Ferrara. I actually have not seen anywhere near enough. I've been meaning to dive into that because he seems to have been doing he definitely has been doing some really interesting stuff in the last 10 years. When I missed him in the 90s, these films weren't around as much. I think I'd only seen Bad Lieutenant, and that was it. And I was so tempted yesterday to just go and chuck Driller Killer on. I'm having that kind of month where I just need to cave my head in with Driller Killer at full volume. I think some of you out there will know what I mean. To have that experience of sometimes just need that. And I have not seen, I don't think, any of his 21st century works. I think I've only seen mostly 90s, The Addiction, Bad Lieutenant. Oh, I miss 45, of course, and the 80s stuff, Driller Killer, the 70s. And yeah, I was a little bit like, okay, this is again, okay, I'm going to go watch this, another slow New York apocalypse film. Yay. And I had a reasonably powerful experience with it. That sounds like weird praise, but I think that is I would not have the guts to make an apocalypse film because I think something that is like right off the bat, you've got to get over that hump that lots of people are going to be going, I wouldn't do that if it was the last couple of days on Earth. If you don't have a propulsive narrative that's pulling you along and it's just kind of, what are we doing sitting around while we wait? Then you're going to be starting to think, well, I wouldn't do this, I would do that. I think Ferrara's film does a better job of individualizing the response, that it is just like how these people are responding. And so it does cut a little bit of that off. I don't know that Exposure 36 does that quite as well. It doesn't necessarily do it badly. I've meant to mention before, when you mentioned Miracle Mile, in regards to like the kind of heterosexual thriller plotting, like Miracle Mile works brilliantly with that because you enter into the film and the plot runs past you and grabs your hand, just goes, quick, come with me. And you don't have any time to think before you just like, bam, you're in it and it's happening and you're being pulled along by it. And Exposure 36 just can't do that. Like, it's just not, none of the way it's set up is ready to do that or able to do that. And I don't think that's necessarily a negative against it until it tries to have some kind of thriller plot. Ferrara's film very much does not have a thriller plot. It is just to hang out. The world is ending. It's so super 2011, like the beginnings of digital really taking over. And yeah, I saw a lot of people online being like, wow, Abel Ferrara made a 2021 COVID lockdown film in 2011.
It could almost be a play that it is so stuck in one location throughout so much of it. The way that he like sneaks into the other apartment at one point, but for the most part, it is just in that one apartment. We see the painting that's being created and things. And okay, yeah, like you said, it felt like a lockdown movie without being a lockdown movie.
You're in a house with this other person who's super focused on this one thing really intensely, while you're just kind of, the other person's just like off in the other space, just doing something really intense. You're like, just leave them do it. Like, it absolutely, like it's ahead of its time in that way. But my response to that is man, like existentialism has always been in lockdown. Even before there were computers, it was like existentialism was like living the lockdown life. That's half the point. And yeah, Ferrara's film is definitely much more leaning that sort of French existentialism than Exposure 36. But they do make interesting companion pieces, more about like filmmaking, I think, and choices that people make and the way that works inspire than perhaps on a thematic level. There's some of the things that they do have in common. We see the Aurora Borealis in 444. It is very much that seems to be some sort of manifestation of what is happening as the world ends. In Exposure 36, it just sort of happens.
Yeah, you've got Al Gore on the TV right off the bat. So I'm just like, okay, this must be some sort of ecological crisis going on.
Yeah, well, they do say in 444 that the ozone layer or the atmosphere is disappearing. That it's essentially it's going to evaporate at this time, and that's it. Which I think is actually a really good explanation, because it's you're essentially then just in space. So there is possibilities that people could bunker down and survive, but it's a lot harder, a big difference to just the weather is catastrophically extreme. And it does lock things off a bit more, I feel. Like it is, Earth will cease to be the planet that it was entirely. Like it is now just a rock floating in space. And that does offer up some richer sort of themes and things to play with than just a anonymous kind of weather event. And it was I mentioned Jeff Nichols before. I'm a big fan of Take Shelter. Take Shelter lives with me. And that is a film which I think Mackenzie is trying to do some of the things that film does, but doesn't have enough understanding of how to communicate the human relationships to make that work. That there's the Take Shelter is such a darker, hopeless, pessimistic film for the most part until the shit hits the fan for real. And then it's, actually, it doesn't matter. We got this. The human connection trumps that. And this film just can't do that. But it's clearly that score, that the tinkling kind of wind chimey things. And that last shot is very, very similar to the last shot of Take Shelter. That the coming storm. It feels a lot richer in meaning in Take Shelter. It helped Take Shelter that it was 2009 or something, and it was way ahead of the curve for being this is how it's going to go down, folks. Versus being in the midst of it and just being okay, this is what's happening. It's harder to find resonance when your reality is tomorrow.
I don't know if you ever saw the 1998 film from Don McKellar. Don McKellar, usually known more for acting. I think it was in a lot of the Adam McGoyan films. And he, can't remember, it was part of a project because 1998, a lot of people, of course, are just okay, year 2000, we're all going to perish somehow kind of thing. Here's the end of the millennium. So there were so many, better than anybody, things like Strange Days, things like that, where it's just okay, all of these movies that are coming out right around the turn of the century that were very apocalyptic. Last Night was very much a quiet apocalypse again. And it was just very much all right, this is our last night on Earth. What's going to be going on? And there's the Don McKellar part of it where we get to see what he's up to. We also have it's very vignette based. We've got Sandra Oh in another storyline. We've got David Cronenberg in another storyline. I probably saw it in 98. So it's been quite a while since I saw it, but I just remember it so fondly. And I regret that I wasn't able to get back and rewatch it, but that's another really nice one. And there's also the countdown thing going on. You have your Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And this one, you've got different times showing up throughout the whole thing. And it feels a little bit more, we see people rioting in the streets. We see people like Sandra Oh, she's doing some shopping or something. And then she comes back to find her car has been flipped over. We got to see the car being flipped over. So you do see these hooligans and things. And it's okay, that's a little bit more what I would expect. People going out with a bang, literally sometimes, and then tonight's a great night to hire a prostitute type of thing. So I really remember appreciating that film, and I need to see if McKellar's made other films since then, because I thought the direction of it was very nice. There were some really powerful images, especially around the Sandra Oh part, as well as the Cronenberg part. Cronenberg He's always such a good actor as well as director, but he is just playing this buttoned up man living a life of quiet desperation. Does it so well too. And it's like he's almost in a two-person play throughout most of this movie.
Yeah, I remember the film. I feel like I might have seen it, but I feel like maybe I haven't because I feel like I would remember the Cronenberg stuff because I love it so much. Yeah, I think Charles Oudo's performance feels lived in, but the writing of this film doesn't feel lived in. And that's what it needed, like what you're saying, like those character kind of vignettes of just like lived life. And I mean, there's certainly something to play with there in not feeling lived in, because that's part of what's making us crazy right now is this whole mediated existence that we don't know what is the good life or even just a basic life or anything. It's like everything's hollowed out. Not everything, but so much is hollowed out. And how to exist in that world. And if the world is ending, then does that make it easier or harder to figure out how to exist? And I think that was something I really appreciated in Ferrara's film, is that fantastic sequence when he goes upstairs to the neighbors and it's these old like heroin junkie mates. And the guy's a drug dealer and they're not mates a drug dealer. And like his old junkie mate is like, nah, don't do it. You've been sober for 2 and a bit years. Is the end of the world worth it? And it's such an interesting conversation, and it feels like it's real. It doesn't feel like someone like thinking out a conversation. This is a conversation that a person who has had an experience with heroin addiction is thought about and had that theoretical.
You got Natasha Lyonne sitting at that table. Okay, I'm sure she's been around these types of conversations as well. Yeah, this feels, that sequence, if not a lot of the film, doesn't feel scripted. Feels very much, okay, let's just improv this scene.
But that scene, like, so pulled everything together for me for that film. Of the, like, what are your decisions for? Like, why do you make the choices that you do? Are you only making this choice because there's a tomorrow and the repercussions that the choice will have in tomorrow? Or are you making this choice because it is meaningful and who you are? And that's Defoe's character is still flapping in the wind. He's a flag without a pole, like his daughter's far away and disconnected and guarded by an ex with a difficult relationship, and his strange connection with his current partner, and then his strange connection with drugs. And it's, you feel like he goes up there to get drugs, that he's ready to be like checking out as the world ends. And this other guy's like, they're snorting coke opposite me, they're drinking booze. I'm like, I'm fine. Like, I have no need for it. I'm 20 years and I'm solid. That was the choice. And it's who I am. And it's so solid and real and beautiful and human. And it's like, there's a lot of that flapping around in the background of Exposure 36 of like why we make choices and decisions and how we end up where we are and how we justify that to ourselves, especially through the fact that he's like basically saying, I have meaning because I'm keeping other people dosed up on drugs to get through this. I was like, wow, that's a fucking awful reason, but also from another, flip the coin on the other side, and it's like, that's a pretty good reason. But it's only a pretty good reason because things are that bad. So it's so much complication there, and it does feel like really drawn on from the Ferrara film about those kind of aspects in it. But it doesn't have the grounding of an old New Yorker who's been through hell.
One of the movies that I wasn't familiar with that one of the reviews of Exposure 36 brought up was a 2013 film called These Final Hours, which is ironically an Australian film. And I watched a lot of that, though. That was tough, man. Some of those, the guy with the machete towards the beginning and the way that he murders a man. So it's very much, I think it's like an asteroid or bits of things because they have that shot near the beginning of this stuff coming through our atmosphere, and it's okay. Again, it feels very end of the century apocalypse type of thing. It feels very deep impact, Armageddon type of storyline. But then at the same time, so you get much more of the, okay, the world's about to end, everything's going to shit kind of thing. And ironically, with this being Australia, the first thing that popped to my mind was on the beach and just thinking of, okay, they know that this cloud of radiation is coming and it's going to kill everyone. What would life be like for them? Same thing here. Okay, we know that this is coming. What is life going to be like? And just to see, there's an image of a guy who has hanged himself from a fucking light pole. That is very striking. There's a lot of the chaos here. But I have to say, for whatever reason, and it might have been that it reminded me of the beginning of that Zack Snyder remake of Dawn of the Dead, I kept thinking that there were going to be zombies in this movie. And the way that the guy was like walking slowly in the middle of the street before the dude with the machete gets out of this car and slices him, I was like, yeah, this feels so much like a zombie film.
You just haven't walked down the street in Australia and pick a summer, mate. You feel like a zombie. I actually have not seen these final hours. It came out when I was working in the cinema, and it was like, I really wanted to see it, but it was like, am I going to watch it after work, or am I going to go home? Which cut out a lot of films of that era. But yeah, I think it was like, yeah, it's like a comet hits, and it's the slowly approaching like wall of fire. I really should see it because it is a fascinating like alignment of ideas. Because yeah, I immediately am like, oh yes, it's very much a modern, like more environmental take on the beach. That is where the last place it's going to hit. But it's also, yeah, it's very much that Snowtown era of Australian filmmaking that is like rough and painful. Something like The Loved Ones as well, which doesn't get talked about anywhere near enough for just, whoa, we had some bottled up pain and it came out in a very tangible manner. It is an interesting way to contemplate the like how you lead a good life. There's nothing beyond. It is something with it, the possible theological aspects of Exposure 36, that there maybe is the hint that there is heaven and hell. Like it has just been hard the last 20 years to be enjoying American cinema because it does feel like it's shrinking in its purview. And a theological aspect, like it feels like something that's easy to just slip into your film because it has meaning, but it's also so meaningless when you're coming down to how do you lead a good life? Everything is over, we're all dead. But that's the whole thing of the opiate of the masses. It's a way to just say, it's fine that it's fucked in this life because it'll be fine in the next one. And while there is the heaven and hell thing, is clearly you have to do some things for it to be fine in the next life. But it still just is like a bit of a cop-out in that it's, I don't actually need to think about it and I've already done all this stuff, so it doesn't matter what I do. Versus, no, actually these last minutes are going to be real long and you're going to have to live with yourself in that. And what are you doing? Sure, check out, but how are you checking out? Are you checking out by taking some guy out with a machete or buying some prescription drugs? Or what are you doing?
Yeah, there's a big nihilism to these final hours. Like when the main character goes to this crazy orgy and people are just there playing Russian roulette. And you've got the one guy who pulls the trigger and it clicks. Okay, great. Hands the gun over to his mate. Next thing, there's blood splattered against the flag. And I'm like, wow, okay. I had no idea, by the way, it's this almost Lone Wolf and Cub-esque story where he's escorting this girl through a lot of stuff. I had no idea. That girl looks so familiar and I had to look her up. She's the one that played Betty Brant in all of the Spider-Man movies, the Homecoming stuff. I had no idea that she was Australian. She hides her accent very well. And then you brought up that the gentleman that directed these final hours also did the recent one, We Bury the Dead, where you get to hear just how terrible Daisy Ridley's accent can be when she tries to flatten it and make it American. Holy shit, that was so distracting. And there's really no reason why she has to be American in the movie, but man, oh man, that was really, really rough. And I think I've heard her be American before, but that was so distracting watching the movie, listening to her voice.
That is weird. That feels like, again, like when you make decisions for your film for marketing, like you're going from want to get the American audience. Nobody wants to watch this Tasmanian zombie film that's not actually shot in Tasmania, so we'll get like a Brit who's going to pretend to be an American to get the American audience. So like, back up 10 lines, guys. I don't think this like someone pretending to be American is going to bring in your audience. Now, Exposure 36 does feel a lot like that real, somebody read a script writing book and it has to have this and it has to have that and you can't do this and you can't do that. And that's unfortunate. It's like if you've got bugger all money and bugger all resources, be creative, throw the book out. Like nobody notices the film that walked in other footsteps. They notice the film that busted out and just did whatever it did and had fun and was creative in strange ways. And I really wish this film had more of that. It's what we need in cinema, is just for people to be like, it's cinema. It can be anything. Yeah, so Australian Apocalypse, last night films. There's also Smoke 'Em If You Got 'Em. Oh, you got to look that up and see that. My God. So it's mid-80s Melbourne underground punk apocalypse film. And it's just like the nuke's being dropped. Melbourne's pretty much gone. It's a wasteland. And a couple of these people find themselves in a bunker in Richmond where just all the local like punks and metalheads and whatever are just going. We've got enough drugs and alcohol to last 3 days, but the radiation's going to kill us in 2, so let's go. And it's gritty and grimy and funny and fucked and dark. And it's, this Funny Houses, they were definitely taking inspiration from Smoke 'Em If You Got 'Em for the big party scene at the end. But yeah, Smoke 'Em If You Got It's just like 30 minutes of just Australian 80s end of the world. I think it is somewhat readily available. I know they got a remaster and a DVD release about 10, 15 years ago, so it might be on Tubi and such.
DVD? What the? Nobody watches DVDs anymore. It's going to be streaming. Otherwise, I won't watch it.
Yeah, this was a local indie distributor doing their best to try and resurrect some like corner of Australian cinema that like didn't really have a market. Yeah, if even a couple of years later would have someone like a Umbrella could have just put it out on Blu-ray with a few extras and it would have been like fine, but it was just before all that really took off.
Yeah, I was just looking up. It's only 48 minutes long, so that's a odd length for a movie. They call it like a extended short or a short feature. So yeah, I'll check it out. It is available in full on YouTube.
Yeah, if you like tangible cinema where you can just feel the grime and the heat and everything. And if you like punk cinema, like it is iconic. It's like classic. Smoke 'Em If You Got 'Em.
Is there anything else you want to talk about Exposure 36?
In my notes, it was the first thing I talked about and then just blasted past it. Just mediation in general. It should be more present in the film. Like it is he says, Cam talks about finding paper in Pompeii still preserved and how that lasted through this mini apocalypse and across time. And so that's why he's taking these photographs to hopefully last long enough that there's some possible future will find them. It's such a great and interesting idea and a great and interesting book, but it's not really infused into the film other than, as you said previously, the photos he takes, which we do see flash on screen briefly. Photos, especially the old photos, even though they were tangible, they were so ephemeral, they were so easily destroyed by disasters and random incidents. And they're just these ephemeral things that kind of weren't really made to last. And he's dreaming of them lasting forever, of them being eternal. and how that feeds into the way that photography captures time and turns these moments that slip away into something frozen forever and eternal. And like the way that these different ideas of ephemeral and eternal bounce off of each other in all forms of media. And at this time, like in a way, digital photography is less ephemeral seeming, but is actually way, way more intangible and ephemeral. It's not going to, like most people, they're just keeping these on drives that won't last as long as a video cassette. When in like the working in post-production, like we archive everything to tape. People think that's crazy. They're like, what? You're putting things onto tape? Yeah, like this super high quality, like LTO tapes, they will outlast any hard drive, any disk drive. And that's how we preserve it. And so it's like this digital era, which we're going to lose so much. It could even be just a giant black spot where it's like silent film, where it's like 10%. If we have 10% of media left from this digital era, it will be amazing. That's a high prediction. It's in the film, but unless you're like coming to the film to write an essay on it, like it's not really much to it. And I thought that was unfortunate because there's so many ways to go with it. There's so many ways to play with that. I think we've mentioned Jetty recently in one of our conversations where it's playing with the stillness of images and in film. And just like the ways to be philosophical and contemplative with mediation and images in films without having to talk about it is like open and rich area to play in. And it felt like that he started with that idea and then lost it. Because even down to, I thought that he wanted, like I got so his safe gets stolen, which is where he keeps all of his negatives. And I get that he wanted his safe back because he wanted the negatives back. But I thought he also wanted the safe back, preserve the negatives. And then he doesn't get it back at the end. Like he grabs the negatives and stuff, but then he's sitting on a train as this storm's coming in. I'm like, bro, your negatives are not going to survive that.
I kept thinking of when I spoke with Lance Henriksen years ago, and he's very into ceramics and pottery. And he was talking about how his dream is to make a piece of pottery and have it at the ready to be fired by the heat death of the apocalypse. And I'm just like, wow. Like, I love that vision of just this nuclear blast in the distance and just that cloud that you see coming, like in those old films that will destroy the houses. But here's this piece of pottery or sculpture that then gets fired into perfection in that last second of the world.
Oh man, I'm just picturing Lance Henriksen standing there holding up his piece of pottery as the wave hits him. Is going to live in my head forever, I hope. That is something I'd never heard that story, and yet that absolutely does not surprise me that is like Lance's dream. That is beautiful and tremendous. Striving for the eternal. And I do love where it starts with that because it feels feels genuine and real, like this person whose life has just fallen apart, that their dream is like derailed, that they're just like surviving on like the underbelly of a sick society that can't cope. And their one thing is to turn fleeting moments into something that lasts forever against all hope. It feels like an absolutely solid rock around which this character is built, and Giles, like, his performance stays connected to that, even when the film wanders from it, that he is still believable in that. But it is why just that last bit, it was like, bro, you've given up. And that could be a part of it as well, but it doesn't quite, there's too much exposition and too much underlining, and then there is actually just leaving space for that reality in your film, and that they don't quite leave space for anything in the last chunk of this film. They just distract themselves and try to be a very typical American heterosexual kind of film narrative. And I was like, man, come on, we can dream bigger than this.
All right, Ben, let's go ahead and take another break, and we're going to play a preview for next week's show right after these brief messages.
She wouldn't flirt with the customers.
Oh, she wouldn't know what that means. I hardly know myself.
I have to have supper with a gentleman. It isn't important, but I told him I would, and I guess I'd better. I have to go to his hotel.
His hotel? You're going to his rooms?
Well, yes. Shouldn't I?
What do you want to cry for when you can do somebody a good deed? Now, here's a man who supported you, and...
That's right.
Certainly it's right.
Like the good fairy with one wave of the wand.
How can you look me in the face again, madam? As for you, you miss... Drive on, drive on! Handed home wrecker! I'll out you
hound! There he is.
Who?
My husband.
Your wife was in the taxi cab with the waiter.
My wife?
Well, how can you laugh at such a moment?
Because I haven't any wife.
And he doesn't know, Detlef. Just think he doesn't know.
Doesn't know what?
That I'm watching over him while he sleeps. That I'm taking care of him. That I'm his good fairy.
That's right, we'll be back next week with a look at the comedy classic, The Good Fairy. Until then, I want to thank my co-host, Ben. Ben, what is happening in your world, sir?
Still just plugging away in the digital salt mines of post-production, steadily losing my mind, hallucinating weird digital issues in the real world, trying to survive the heat apocalypse. And yeah, cats. Lots of cats. Too many cats. Anybody want to rescue cat? Hit me up. I've got posters coming out of my ears. Getting back into Letterboxd after taking a little bit of a break, and you can find me over there at Dissolved Pet. I was just saying earlier that I've only managed to watch 3 films this year. They are Misery, Welcome to Whoop Whoop twice, 3-4 times, and this film twice, and it's definitely making me feel strange that that's the combo floating in my head.
Well, thank you so much, Ben, for being on the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. Do you want to support physical media and get great movies in the mail? Head over to scarecrow.com and try Scarecrow Video's incredible rent-by-mail service, the largest publicly accessible collection in the world. You'll find films there entirely unavailable elsewhere. Get what you want, when you want it, without the scrolling. If you want to hear more of me shooting off my mouth, check out some of the other shows that I work on. They are all available at weirdingwaymedia.com. Thanks especially to our Patreon community. If you want to join the community, visit patreon.com/projectionbooth. Every donation we get helps the projection booth take over the world.